Okay, great. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this evening. Welcome to the webinar. This evening, we are going to be talking about the housing element of Milwaukee's comprehensive plan. We have interpreters here. Interpretation is available in Hmong. As you heard for Spanish, we will be recording that and posting it later. The Hmong recording will also be posted for viewing. Again, if anyone is joining a little later and does need Spanish translation, please do let us know in the chat for this evening. This is an informational webinar where we will provide an overview of where the housing element plan is now, changes since the last draft plan, and then we'll have time for some questions and answers. If you have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to submit them in the question and answer feature, and then we will answer them in the end at the end of the session. I'm Tanya Fonseca, and I'm joined here by city colleagues Amy Oath and Sam Likling, who are also panelists. And Joanna and Zong Cheng are our lovely interpreters in Spanish and Hmong, so thank you to them. For this meeting's agenda, we will give a quick overview of the plan and why the city took on the project. And then we will provide a summary of the engagement that we received throughout the process and a summary of the updates that we've made to the plan, thanks to all of your feedback. We also will talk about how you can provide additional feedback on the proposed draft plan that's available online now, and then we will end with questions and answers. So let's dive in. So what is the plan? This plan is an amendment to the city-wide policy plan, and this plan sets a collective vision for housing, and it includes policies and recommendations for housing and neighborhoods in Milwaukee, including updates to the city's zoning code. And the plan will be adopted. Once the plan will be adopted, staff will work on implementation, and some of that implementation includes some zoning code updates. So I mentioned that this plan has policies and recommendations. So we'll spend a little time talking about what a policy is. A planning policy is a guiding principle or statement that informs how decisions about land can be used, and it can guide future efforts for how to improve physical, social, and economic conditions in Milwaukee. But plan policies are not regulations, so they cannot create new or change existing programs, regulations, or funding for specific priorities on their own. So for example, a policy might say, allow for accessory dwelling units in all neighborhoods. This policy would guide future zoning decisions and development approvals to allow for accessory dwelling units in more neighborhoods. This plan also makes recommendations to update the zoning code. A zoning code is both a written document, so like that example on the right, all the text, with all the rules, along with a map that shows what zone each piece of land is part of. And each zone has a unique set of rules that guide development in terms of use and the size and shapes of buildings. And these zoning rules and changes to the zoning map are laws that are adopted by the city's common council. So why are we taking on this project now? And why are we talking about policies and zoning? There are many different housing types and many different needs for all households across the Milwaukee community. And we spent a lot of time talking to all of you about what we would like to see. And during that process, we heard from the community and through the data that there is a need for a greater diversity of housing types so that we all have more choice. We also know that we have a housing shortage for people that live in Milwaukee right now. We have one of the most competitive rental markets in the country, and we have not been seeing enough housing, rehab, and development for the last couple of decades, meaning that we don't have enough supply in both rental and home ownership. And we also know we have room for more housing and more households in the city of Milwaukee. We used to have 150,000 more people in the city than we do today, which means that there were more people living here, uh, in the homes, supporting the businesses, and paying into the tax base to support city services. So we took on this project to encourage more housing choice for everyone here and those who will call Milwaukee home in the future as well. The planning process kicked off back in the summer of 2023. And at that time, we kicked off strong with a lot of helpful discussion about the visioning and goals for housing and what we collectively need moving forward. Then we came back with draft recommendations based on that outreach, looking at previous planning studies for consistency and discussed all of those recommendations with the community. Then in April 2024, we rolled out a draft plan with another round of community engagement throughout the city. And based on the feedback in spring of 2024, we updated the draft and hosted a public hearing in July. At that public hearing, we received requests from the community for additional engagement, as well as a benefit and harm analysis. So, over the fall and early winter of 2025, we conducted additional engagement. And using that engagement, we developed a benefit and harm analysis that's available online, and we made updates to the plan based on all the feedback that we received. So now we're at a point where we have a proposed draft plan that's based on all of the engagement throughout the process, including these last few months. For the engagement, we have interacted directly and indirectly throughout the process with over 10,000 people. Over 2,250 people engaged at open houses, pop-ups, community meetings, and focus groups, and over 8,600 people engaged on the website through the activities available online, as well as viewing the video recordings of the meetings like these. We have also included multilingual materials and interpretation throughout the process. So I just want to thank our interpreters here again this evening, Zong Cheng and Joanna. They've been here throughout the process, and we really appreciate their expertise and support. Throughout the engagement process, we heard a lot of really important, helpful things that informed this plan. Themes include affordability in terms of home ownership and neighborhood choice, neighborhoods and quality of life, thinking about repair and anti-displacement. We also heard a lot about quality building design, sustainability and resilience in terms of healthy environments and parks, transportation options, including walkability and safe streets, and fair, safe, and quality housing conditions and accountability, including accountability for landlords. And finally, we did hear also about growth and making sure that we have a resilient city that is a good place for all of us moving forward. We also developed a benefit and harm analysis that goes alongside the housing element. And this benefit and harm analysis analyzes the near-term zoning strategies that we talk about in the housing element and evaluates the potential benefits and the unintended consequences that are possible of proposed recommendations for future updates to the zoning code. It focuses on the concerns that have been raised by the community, by all of the community members during the public engagement process. And it also talks about the plan's alignment with the city's goals for housing, affordability, choice, anti-displacement, and ensuring that vulnerable communities aren't harmed by the plan's recommendations. It also includes steps to track data and mitigate potential unintended consequences of the plan's recommendations. So the analysis covers 5 areas: where we're starting from, where we are now, the zoning and policy recommendations of the housing element, the plan benefits, those potential harms and concerns, and then those impacts. And the engagement and the benefit and harm analysis really shaped the updates to the plan that you see today, as well as the tracking and the techniques that the city will implement to mitigate potential harm. And this is available online if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. And with that, I'll pass things to Amy.
Hello, everyone. So with all the feedback received, including the last round engagement, they've really helped form these additional updates to the plan. So these updates are intended to make it clear how we're reflecting plans and goals and working to meet current housing needs. So here's a quick summary of the updates that we'll run through this evening. We've updated the near-term zoning strategies, and that included some restructuring of the plan overall. So as you look through the document, it might look a bit different, but also some familiar. We also included a section on 7 key priorities. There are some updates to the policies, and there are 4 policies that were added. There's also a section regarding commitments to support Milwaukee's housing system, an explanation of the name change. And we also updated the data to make sure it's up to date with more infographics and storytelling. This included expanding the explanations of the housing types and moving that earlier in the plan. So first, the updates to the zoning recommendations. These are 2 near-term zoning code update recommendations that are included in the May 1st proposed plan. The first is to update the zoning code to allow for more types of neighborhood scale housing in our neighborhoods. So this includes allowing in all neighborhoods to detach single family homes, townhomes or fee simple attached homes, accessory dwelling units, and cottage courts. And I'm going to show you in a minute how this compares to that July 2024 draft. The other near-term strategy is one that has not changed throughout the process. So this is still recommending adjusting the zoning code to remove barriers to new housing on business corridors and in multifamily zoning districts, relying on height limits, setback requirements, and design standards instead of mathematical equations to control the number of housing units. So this just applies to the multifamily districts and the commercial districts where multifamily is already allowed. This is a comparison chart that runs through the near-term strategy 1 between comparing the July 2024 draft and the updated proposed 2025 plan. So for single family detached homes, our current code allows for this in all single family and 2 family districts. So single family being the RS districts, RT being the 2 family districts. So there's no change. July plan recommended continuing to allow them, and same with 2025. Single family attached homes or townhomes, and these are currently allowed in all the RT, the 2 family districts. Recommended in the July plan was to allow them in all RS and RT districts, and this is the same in the 2025 draft. Accessory dwelling units. These are not defined in our zoning code currently. Recommendation in the July 2024 draft was to allow them in the RS and RT districts. This is the same in the 2025 draft. Cottage courts are also not defined in our current zoning code. Recommendation in 2024 was to allow these in the RS and the RT districts. Same thing with the 2025 draft. The recommendation for duplexes in the 2024 draft was to allow them in all RS and RT districts. That recommendation has been removed, so they'll continue to be allowed in RT districts as they are today. For triplexes, these are currently allowed in the RT4 district. The 2024 draft recommended allowing them in all RS and RT districts. For the 2025 draft, the recommendation has been removed. So there's no change from the current zoning code. Fourplexes are also only allowed in the RT4 district now. In the 2024 draft, recommended allowing them in all RT districts. That recommendation has been removed, so there's no change from the current zoning code. So as we noted, there are, we added these 7 key priorities to really describe the priorities of the plan. Those priorities include increased housing choice and access, repairing homes and neighborhoods, a commitment to intergovernmental collaboration and legislative advocacy, a commitment to home ownership, a commitment to anti-displacement, economic resilience, and walkable neighborhoods. So the plan includes a few policy updates. The first updated policy really reflects the changes to that near-term zoning strategy recommendation for neighborhood scale housing that I just talked about. So the policy more references changes over time, allowing for more housing variety through a variety of processes versus the previous version, which was recommending more housing types by right in the near term. There's also a new policy that talks about how zoning map change processes can be used in appropriate locations for middle housing types like duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes. There's also a call out box that talks more about the RS, the residential single family and RT districts, what they're like and their compatibility. There's also a new policy that talks about how an applicant for zoning changes should engage with impacted neighborhoods during the pre-development process. All right. And then we renamed section 2 to neighborhood repair, connections, and health. We updated the short-term rental policy. It now references adopting regulations versus monitoring and considering regulations. There is a new policy regarding the appropriateness of the creation of overlays for vulnerable communities. We also added a new policy that talks about limiting the placement of fire escapes so they're not along the street. And then in general, there were some language adjustments, just more for clarity and references, and some reorganization to help with formatting as we made some of these changes. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sam.
Thank you. Sam Leichling, again, Department of City Development. What Amy talked about, the changes that we made to the plan based on some of the feedback we've heard. And the other categories of feedback we heard were general requests that the city make sure that we are really elevating recommendations in the plan that demonstrate the strategies that we're either already carrying out or also will carry out in the future around a few different topics. And those especially included what we're doing to support homeownership and the city's goals to continue to develop and implement systems that provide homeownership opportunities for people who've previously been perhaps locked out of homeownership. Also strategies around ensuring that the city advances strategies that will support anti-displacement and that residents are able to remain in their neighborhoods and homes. And also the growing understanding that to achieve the deeply affordable housing needs of Milwaukeeans and to make sure that we're able to meet the city's goals of ensuring that every single Milwaukeean has a safe and affordable place to live, we're going to need continued legislative advocacy and intergovernmental collaboration across different levels of government to increase the amount of funding that's allocated for affordable housing and to make changes to both state laws that allow the city to do additional measures that will protect the rights of tenants that are at risk of displacement or eviction, as well as to hold landlords accountable for ensuring that people are treated fairly during the rental process and that their properties are kept up to code. We know that those are tremendous priorities of both, city government and neighbors and residents. And so we wanted to make sure that that was reflected in the plan. A lot of that had been in the earlier versions of the draft, but we wanted to elevate that, tie it all together in a more accessible package, and also, add some additional language about strategies that the city will carry out both now and in the future to advance those goals. And so there's a a number of additional pages in the plan that were added to express, to organize and express those commitments and goals. And we look forward to continuing to work not just within city government, with our partners across the housing ecosystem to implement those recommendations after the plan is adopted. We also talked about the name change, and we want to, acknowledge one of the reasons that we changed the name is we continued to hear during the engagement process that the growing MKE name suggested that the goals of the plan were more focused on growing the population versus meeting the housing needs of our existing population. And we wanted to honor that feedback we heard, both through the changes you've already heard about to the plan, but also to really acknowledge that the goal of the plan has always been to ensure that we're able to help all Milwaukeeans, both the ones who currently call Milwaukee home and people who may call Milwaukee home in the future, meet their housing needs. And so we've changed the name to the housing element of the city's comprehensive plan, which the plan had always been designed as that housing element. And we've just updated the name to reflect and honor some of that feedback, that the priority remains meeting the housing needs of today's Milwaukeeans as well as future residents. And all of these changes that we've talked about and all of the policy recommendations remain tied to the goals that we set out and talked about at the start of the planning process, and that Amy and Tanya both touched on earlier, which is advancing the city's goals for housing choice and access, economic development, walkable and connected neighborhoods, a city that is sustainable and resilient and healthy and thriving. And we want to make sure that all of those recommendations that are in the plan tie back to those goals, and also attempt to respond to the feedback we've heard throughout the planning process. And so where do we go from here? Well, the draft of the plan, the proposed draft plan, is available online. There's an executive summary. There's a summary of the changes. There's the benefit and harm analysis, if you've heard, and we're carrying out a number of webinars this week and next week that will be available. We're also having one-on-one and small group discussions with neighborhoods that have reached out with specific questions, and we're happy to continue that. So if you have additional questions, you know how to reach us at the Growing MK email address. I'm happy to have kind of continued deeper discussions with smaller groups offline or in other formats. And then in June, the plan will be presented to the City Plan Commission, where there'll be a public hearing held, and the City Plan Commission will take testimony and comments, consider the updates to the plan and any public feedback, and ultimately then make a recommendation to the Zoning and Neighborhoods and Development Committee. That's a committee of the Common Council, where there'll be another public hearing, and the Zoning and Neighborhoods Development Committee will again take public feedback and testimony and determine if any additional changes to the plan should be made before passing it along to the full Common Council to consider this for a vote for adoption. At that point, if the Common Council adopts it, the mayor will sign it, and it will then become an element of the city's comprehensive plan. And then we will work collectively with our partners throughout the city and other departments to begin to implement the recommendations. And we know that's not a short-term process. Some of these recommendations can be achieved in the short term. Others will be ones that will take, years of working through with partners to try to continue to advance these various goals. And we look forward to any continued collaboration with partners who want to be part of implementing this plan. And we're certainly always happy to have discussions about how we can collectively do that in partnership with our neighborhood partners. So with that, I think we now, that concludes the prepared comments. We want to make sure to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Amy.
I'm going to show the website as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, can you all see the website? All right, so this is the Housing Element website. Just wanted to give a quick overview. If you scroll down here, you can go to the proposed draft and resources page. And under here, you can view the proposed plan. There's a comment form to make comments, executive summaries as well. And then if you go down here, there's several tabs of additional information. So this summary of changes to the plan, you can view it as a PDF or on here. Click link to the benefit and harm analysis, which is also a digital and PDF version, an engagement summary, a link to the interactive zoning map, and link to frequently asked questions. I did want to note that this is what the interactive zoning map looks like. So if you click on these, you can zoom into any parcel in the city, see what the current zoning is, what's currently allowed, and what the plan recommends. Also, if English is not your first language and you prefer to view the website in a different language, you can go here. A lot of the information we try to get in a digital format so that it would be accessible and other languages as well. All right, so back to the PowerPoint and time for Q&A.